Hello, I am Parberway. This video is for Agma Schwa's cursed conlang circus thing. Link will be somewhere. Die Tipo sed Arakai, also known as Fifi Tipo Fing Zang sed Arapat Geisish Pon Sad Guy, is an oligosynthetic oxlang. I made this language 2 years ago because I don't need the promise of fame and fortune to make a cursed language. That is just what I do. So this language doesn't have the over-the-top phonological mayhem or whatnot that other languages might have, but what it does have, take this anecdote. I made another language that was specifically intended to be a cursed joke language, and I decided to enter this language instead, because it is more cursed. You will see. Die Tipo sed Arakai is an oligosynthetic oxlang, two words that do not normally go together, and really should not ever. In the video announcing the contest, it was said that one might make a cursed a posteriori conlang, maybe the worst oxlang imaginable. This implies that oxlangs are a posteriori, which, in the case of many popular oxlangs, such as Vautgil or Lingua de Planeta, is not really the case. I'm going to assume that this is just me muddling the definition of oxlang and IAL, the latter of which Die Tipo sed Arakai is technically meant to be, but also, when making the vocabulary of Die Tipo sed Arakai, I, a person who is a monolingual speaker of exactly 2 languages, for the most part just went off of vibes to figure out what sounded most like that thing, resulting in like 90% of the vocabulary being either from English or Romance languages. So for all functional purposes, Die Tipo sed Arakai is a posteriori, so I suppose I am entering this in the a posteriori category, though, as you will see, functional purposes is not a phrase that will be further required when describing this language. I'm just going to breeze through the phonology because it's not this language's specialty. Here's all the consonants. This is, in my opinion, a better, more balanced consonant inventory than almost any actual oxlang out there. The vowels, on the other hand, are what would happen if you threw 9 darts at a vowel-shaped dartboard and asked a native English speaker who knew nothing about linguistics to imagine what each vowel would sound like. Plus there are a lot more vowels and fewer consonants than English. I borrowed the consonants H, J, and W to be vowels. This has the side effect that now what is represented by V. Why did I do it this way? The maximum syllable structure is CVC, but it is fine, in certain cases, to have 2 bouts of CVC against each other in a word. These cases have nothing to do with the sounds themselves, and are entirely quirks of the grammatical system. If you thought that the limited consonant inventory would make it easy or pleasant to speak, you are wrong. However, in the cases that the grammar rules would normally tell you to put 2 vowels in a row, a T is inserted between them. This happens quite frequently. Now, because the language is oligosynthetic, the base vocabulary is pretty small, so instead of saying something like bread, you would say watery crushed grain, but crucially, this all gets combined into one big word. As Die Tipo sed Arakai is a completely rational and logical language for rational and logical people like me and you, I decided that, just like Lojban for example, this language would have no ambiguity at all, and you would always be able to parse the meaning of things 100% for sure. But if Lojban was the world's best GUI, then Die Tipo sed Arakai is graphing calculator notation. Die Tipo sed Arakai makes use of verbal parentheses, mainly in the form of the circumfixes die kai, which is used when showing possession or origin, and fi gai, which is used in all other cases. To describe a noun, you first make sure that the thing you want to describe it with is an adjective. Now is a good time to point out that nouns begin with consonants and end in vowels, verbs begin and end with consonants, except for eb, which means to be, but is not used as a copula. For coupletic purposes, you describe the subject with the adjective system, and then follow that with the verb wab, which means to exist. Adjectives, on the other hand, begin with vowels and end with consonants. You can freely convert between adjectives and nouns and verbs using various suffixes and circumfixes, but not between adjectives and verbs. To do that, you have to convert it to a noun first and then convert it to a verb, or vice versa. There are also some other affixes that you can add to certain kinds of words, which really only serve to make things more complicated, like the one that makes things mean the opposite and another that negates the meaning, which are 2 different things, which would be fine if this wasn't supposed to be an oxlang. Finally, you can describe that noun, affix the noun and adjective together, then surround with the appropriate circumfix. This can be done recursively, and you better get used to doing it because you have to do this frequently. To describe a subject with more than one argument, add a space, then the particle che between them, then another space. These spaces are phonemic, and the things either side of them cannot stand as words on their own. Here's the table of pronouns. They follow a regular pattern, allowing any combination of first, second, or third person singular, plural inclusive, or plural exclusive, and male, female, inanimate, or unspecified. In what circumstances would you need to use the first person inanimate? I don't know, but it's there. Word order is VSO. This seemed like a good time to point that out. Here's the verb conjugations. Instead of using any existing tense aspect system, this system asks whether the action takes place in the past, present, or future, and from the perspective of the past, present, or future. This system disallows exact translation of verb tense and aspects into or out of DT plus Arakai, as it is not compatible with the way verbs work in any language that exists. Verbs also have three moods: declarative, progressive, and conative, which, for some reason when I made this chart, I defined as perfective, stative, and conative. Like in any good conjugation system, you can choose to leave any and all of the verbs, tenses, aspects, and moods undefined. With the split tense system, thinking about the implications of leaving both the tense of the action undefined and the perspective undefined hurts my brain. There are also number and demonstrative article systems. They work similarly to the pronoun system in that they allow more meanings than necessary. You don't need nouns to use the adjective system. You could describe any word with it as long as you're using an adjective. Actually, I lied, because it's not only used with adjectives, it's also used with prepositional phrases. Although I didn't really lie, because in like 99% of cases you could just treat prepositional phrases exactly the same as adjectives. Prepositional phrases are surrounded by the circumfix fing pot. In between, you will find one of a handful of prepositions, followed by another one of those phonemic spaces that we all love, then the object, which itself can, and often is, augmented using the adjective system, sometimes even with another prepositional phrase. Finally, relative phrases are just a whole clause stuck inside the circumfix ngap ngopo, which turns the whole thing into a noun, and also doesn't leave any space between the circumfix and the first and last words of the sentence, because, like, why would you do that? Proper names are just the names DT plus Arakai as best as they can be, and the first and last letter are capitalized to indicate that it's not a real word. Place names use endonyms. This is the only instance of capital letters in DT plus Arakai. When talking about animals, you use a strictly DT plus Arakai's version of the scientific name of the family that contains that animal. If you want to be more specific, you use the unmodified Latin genus and species name in italics. Non-count nouns don't exist. DT plus Arakai counts all nouns. What would normally be called non-count nouns in lesser languages are treated as plurals, except when you have one of them. So you would say something like waters when you have more than one molecule of the hydrogen monoxide, but water when you only have one. There is only one interjection, shy. It stands for all expletives and interjections. The number of shy stringed together indicates the severity of the profanity. A single shy means something as benign as darn. Once you get past 4, you are no longer suitable for TV. Here's the B-movie sentence. Fide pishgai fi pud pam fing sake, fi pei shurs fing veing, fi turura pot che sha che a supperak gai che, a chai why doth aish gai fi turura. Fi tor eris lit kai, fi teb pam fi tesek ape fing fabe, ngap fi met fing par fi chup pon esh guy, pot guy. Disaway let kai ngopo pot guy, fide pishe guy, shy, fifi tor pam ush ash ufogin urk guy, lab de pis fifi chutin pam imont guy, ngapsus. Tine pam shy y goad ngopo guy. Do you hear that playing? Links to all the things are in the description. All the documentation is on CWS, but I also included a link to where you can see the lexicon on my website if that's more your style. Goodbye.